Hello and welcome to Mama Drama Trauma Academy. I'm Tammy Taylor, your teacher and host, whose only qualification is having healed my own and successfully supporting others to do the same.
Mama Drama Trauma Academy
is now in session on the topic of
how we lose perfectly good friends in the course of healing Mama Drama Trauma. As empaths, people who feel the feelings of others accurately. Now, that doesn't mean we know what the feelings mean. That's emotion. The meaning of the feeling is emotion.
What are they saying in this song?
The song says, I thought I will not be coward. The song says that.
Is that all it says? Is that all it says?
The song,
Yes, what else are they saying?
they say that I thought I could not be coward.
That's all.
That's all.
Meaning that with the witch doctor they can be cured.
Yeah?
Meaning that with the witch doctor they can be cured.
No, the keyword. Doctors, they cure people. They are like doctors in hospitals.
So, for example, empaths can accurately feel sad, mad, happy, glad, even frustrated, okay? Disgust, joy. We can feel the feelings of others accurately, regardless of what the external is saying, regardless of what they are saying, regardless of what their facial expression is saying, regardless of where they are, what they're doing. We can walk into the room or walk into the environment and we can feel the feelings of others accurately. Intuitive empaths, psychic empaths, can feel the emotions of others accurately. So that means they know why someone is happy, sad, mad, glad, okay? This person is glad because they just got off a phone call with someone. And depending on the depth of skill, they will know who that someone is. Whether it was a child, whether it was a mother, based on the energy that they feel, okay? The depth of experience, the depth of experience. And so that's what we're talking about here at Mama Drama Trauma Academy. We are all, say it with me, dearly loved divine children of the great Mother, Father, God, who were never judged, condemned, or left alone, regardless of being empaths with the mother wound, feeling the feelings of our mothers since being in embryo, marinating in her mother wound. It is a cycle. So we absorbed it before we were even born. And so we know our mothers quite intimately, and because mothers establish how we relate to others as empaths, we're born as empaths. You can develop empathic skills, just as people born empaths, as we empaths, can develop intuitive empathic skills. We are all divine children. We are already perfect. We already are full of knowledge. However, we are here simply to gain experience. We're just here to gain experience. And so this session of lessons at the Academy are going to delve more deeply into the wisdom, the karma, the knowledge, and what all of this means in relationship to Mama Drama Trauma. It's not what you think. It's not a punitive thing. It may sound that way because that is your frame of reference. That's your experience this lifetime. And the best language we have is karma. In Sanskrit, literally, it simply means actions. We are here to take actions to learn and gain experience so that our knowledge becomes wisdom, okay? Not just knowing the perfection of our divinity, but we come here under the veil of ignorance to walk it out and to gain wisdom, which is experience of that knowledge. So today, we're talking about how we lose perfectly good relationships. People that we do have healthy attachments with, that we love, that we enjoy. Why we lose those relationships in the course as we are healing mama drama trauma. Why those relationships fall by the wayside. And because we are highly sensitive, this is the biggest reason, intuitively, regardless of our intuitive skill level, all empaths have a higher than normal degree of intuition. You might want to look at some of the sessions we've had about highly sensitive people being the 20%, and of that 20%, 5% are empaths, to gain a clearer understanding of that. But we all have this intuitive fear, this dread, that as we do claim our divinity identity and we begin to acknowledge, as the Mama Drama Trauma Healing Oracle deck has the 6 steps of healing based on the 5 steps of grieving, essentially from Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's teachings about the end of life. And that's what we're doing as old souls. Empaths are old souls. We are at a point of high sensitivity on this planet. We've had so many experiences. We're sensitive to many things. Just like the longer you live, the more you anticipate certain things are going to happen. You know, if I'm going to drive 30 miles, I'm going to need to have a certain amount of gas in my tank. If I'm going to have a child, or if my child, I didn't know when I had a child, but now that I have experience, once again, when my child has a child, they may not know, but I know you're going to need X, Y, and Z. That's why we're so highly sensitive. We live so many lifetimes. We anticipate many things, and we're in an environment full of people who are not sensitive to these things, and it's highly dysregulating with the mother wound. Got it? Okay. We do not, therefore, want to let go of perfectly good friendships. Those friends that perhaps in childhood understood us, they got us. They didn't cause us to tailspin into emotional dysregulation. They didn't challenge us in ways that brought about cognitive dissonance when we didn't know we had MDT. In other words, we love our mothers very, very deeply. And the cognitive dissonance that we have is that as old souls, we believe we are dearly loved divine children of the great Mother, Father, God, who are never judged, condemned, or left alone. Case in point, I live in Florida. Hurricanes going around me all the time. And one just recently went by me this week. Huge devastation. Why am I here? Where else am I going to go? Okay, I've lived in Africa, I've lived in Europe, so I have a frame of reference to, certain things, and where am I going to go? It's always going to be something. And we all have to do our cost-benefit analysis. Great Mother is the water to me, is nature to me. It grounds me. So, risk-benefit analysis is a very personal thing, which is why most of us do not want to do the healing work. I've been doing this long enough to know that just because I'm putting this down doesn't mean it's being picked up. However, those of us who can will be blessed. And those of us who will do the work will heal. I know that. And I know that the alienation, the being ostracized, I guess that's ostracization, anyway, being kicked to the curb is not exactly what we want to experience again, especially when we have dear friends who love, care for us. And I'm going to tell you a little story about my experience with this and how what we have learned here about the 6 different mama types, the 6 different mothers that are also represented throughout the 6 suits of the deck. The first step is acknowledge. We'll acknowledge, and that's why most of us are here, right? We acknowledge mama drama trauma, but there's 6 more steps to this game. And the soul views it like that if it is not too jaded. And that's where the astrology comes in. It shows us the soul perspective of this lifetime with mama drama trauma. And the more familiar we are with that perspective, the more we can modulate it, the more we can massage it, the more we can make that perspective what it needs to be. Yes, all of us do believe we are dearly loved children of the great Mother, Father, God, who are never judged, condemned, and left alone, because we've lived so many lifetimes in hurricanes, in famines, in pandemics, and we've had all these experiences and have been protected. So that's all that we have left to, that to us is a factual, truthful reality. Therein lies the cognitive dissonance with mama drama trauma. Our very dear, good, understanding friends do not make us decide between that core belief that we may not even be aware of, and most of us are not until we come to MDT Academy on a conscious awareness level. They do not make us choose between that and mama. Because a cognitive dissonance is a belief in something and an idea, and an opposing idea being introduced. For example, I'm not loved because mama doesn't love me. I believe, my core belief as a soul incarnated in this form believes I am a divine being, just as everyone else is. I believe that. I know that for many lifetimes, right? That's my core belief. The dissonance comes in through the experience of maternal neglect, maternal abandonment, abuse, through a lack of maternal presence, provision of care and protection. So we can't believe that. No, mama loves me. No, that's not true. I wasn't abandoned. She did the best that she could. And this is a divine attitude when it is an authentic attitude, earned, gained through experience. If the experience is still one of abandonment and abuse, that's the pain, and therefore there are the triggers. Triggers are unhealed wounds. And so if the wounding is still there, that is a false, phony attitude. It's not a true belief. Therein lies the cognitive dissonance. I say all that. Meanwhile, I'm getting hit upside my head every time I try to have a conversation about healing this thing between us. I say all that and I try to present myself that way, that I am taking the higher road and whatnot. Meanwhile, I'm being sabotaged every time I turn around and hearing something very negative that's being said about me by my mother. Meanwhile, that's cognitive dissonance. This is what takes up all of our emotional energy. And for many, is very fatal, because it's impossible to manage any other life. That takes up your whole life energy. So that's why we're here, is to not only acknowledge this, but to self-inquire, to get to the truth of how we are feeling, process those feelings with integrity so that we can be reborn. There is a death that must come so that we can resurrect into the emancipated divine beings that we are. That's the aspiration. Acknowledge, self-inquiry, processing, integrity, resurrection, emancipation. We aspire to live in loving detachment. In the meantime, we hold on to that one, if we're lucky, two perfectly good friends. And I've had several. I could be on here all day talking about them and how they are released in the process of healing MDT, not because we want them to be. Obviously, we need them. We feel that we do. And in many cases, we do until we don't. We do need them until we don't. My story begins my sophomore year in college. And it was, that was the year that I applied, but the story actually begins my junior year. It was my junior year abroad. And how I'm thinking sophomore year, I don't know. Anyway, it's my junior year abroad. I went from Northwestern University to Sussex University in Brighton, England. And had a fabulous time. Was part of the African Student Union and all sorts of just really fun things culturally. And I led a dance troupe with girls from all over the continent. One in particular from Tanzania became a very good close friend. And I didn't realize at the time, all of this is in retrospect, but our friendship developed out of her curiosity about my love for Africa. I had been raised in a very self-aware African-American family from the Midwest. I grew up celebrating Kwanzaa. It's just recently come into popularity, and I don't know what they're talking about half the time, but that started by the Black United Front in the 60s, and grew up celebrating that. I was born in the 70s, and just part of my life. And other such Afrocentric things, attitudes, and awareness, education, consciousness. I had been to Africa before my junior year. Maybe that's why I was thinking sophomore year, right? Because I had gone to Africa the summer before my sophomore year. In fact, to Tanzania and Kenya. So see how the soul is. And so a lot of times we disregard things, and we need to kind of stick with things because sometimes the soul just comes right through, especially with us. And so that's why the story began my sophomore year, because that changed my life. And when my sophomore year started after that summer in Africa with Crossroads, which was the precursor to the Peace Corps. The Peace Corps was modeled after Crossroads, which was started by, I think his name was J. Marshall, an African-American who in the 50s said that just as America is helping Europe rebuild after World War II, African-Americans need to go to Africa to help Africa rebuild after decolonization. And of course, like I said, that was my upbringing. And Northwestern was very supportive. And that's another thing. People support you with what your truth is, and people will resonate to you. And so this is why I want to share, the story, because I talk about these things and they sound impossible. I know. And I empathize with that because there are things that sound impossible to me. But in retrospect, and like I said, working with people throughout the years, I have found them to be true. Went there, studied Swahili at Northwestern a year. My freshman year, they taught Swahili. That was my language that I took. And I took French and went over there, although those were English colonies. And so by the time I met my friend, she was just impressed, you know, especially during those times. People weren't crisscrossing the globe like they are now. And I didn't really realize that that's what it was, but that's what it was. I'm just thinking, wow, you know, I'm more impressed with her and, you know, her story and everything, which was she was raised by a single mom, had a Greek father, and was totally enamored with my romanticized perception of Africa, the village, the community. Everybody's saying community now, but we've been saying that forever, trying to heal since slavery, but all of a sudden now everybody's talking about community. But anyway, grew up with that. And she was just really fascinated with it and thought that it was cute. I didn't realize this at the time, but she was really curious, you know, like, where is she getting this from? Is this what she saw in Kenya? This what, you know, and it's true today that people stick together and communities are strong and that sort of thing, but that wasn't her personal experience. You know, they weren't really supported. Obviously, her mother had gone with someone outside of the community, and she had gone to boarding school in Britain and just had a different experience. And it was kind of like I was telling her about her home in a way that she really hadn't experienced it for herself. Although she loved her family, she had been to Tanzania and was very close, you know, maternal ties and whatnot. But that was that. And so she was so curious about my family. She had never met an American, let alone African American, that was that aware of Africa and whatnot, could speak with her language, Swahili and everything. She wanted to come and see where I live. And so she did. And I felt a great deal of support and understanding from her, not realizing that what I was really getting was an affinity with her self-concept. You know, it was I was supporting her. It was like a mutual thing of us confirming our tribal associations, not so much us as individuals. And this is really key when we have friends and when we hold on to loyalties to our family. We really want to distinguish, just be clear about what our relationship is based on. Is it based on the family, the blood, the tribal association? She wanted to see my family, where I came from. That was a part of me, but that really wasn't me. But still, that was a friendship that was valuable to me at that time, because not many Americans, African Americans at that time, were into it. At that time, most African Americans were afraid of Africa. You know, if you talked about Africa, you were crazy. So I'm used to people talking about whatever I talk about is crazy my entire life. You know, it's always been 2 decades ahead of the curve. So I'm used to it. I'm used to people not responding to what I say. I used to speak about Africa in school and share about my experiences with Kwanzaa and whatnot. I remember one time in school, my French teacher had heard one of my talks about African things, and Kwanzaa in particular. And she had a organization that she was donating some services to as a French teacher to a French colony. I believe it was Côte d'Ivoire. And she asked me to record a talk to them, to the children's group or the church or whatever, about what African Americans were doing over here, you know, with this African heritage with Kwanzaa. And I said, well, that's really not West African, that's East African. And I remember at that time, she was like so confused. She was like, it's Africa. And I'm like, no, it's a huge continent. 5 of the United States just about can fit into Africa, and that's from one end to the other. But I did it. And so I'm used to that. And with her, I appreciated that she went beyond the surface of things and could talk to me. We don't really have people that can talk to us about things that we're interested in. When you're an old soul, you've done so many things, you've experienced so many things, you're interested in very highly specific things. You read about it, you like to go to places, or you just like to daydream about things that people have no conception of. I mean, it's kind of like, after you've gone to college for 20 years, what else are you going to study? Type of thing. And we are caught in this crosshairs of people who perceive us as weird, or, they have to walk on eggshells around us or whatever. And it's just because we're just not that primitive. We can be, most certainly. We have a lot of experience with that, but that's not what we're trying to do. And so, although, I'm not speaking primitive in the sense of Africa or whatever, because that's one of the most sophisticated places I've ever been. I was just speaking with my man this morning about camping. And he was like, but you don't really like camping. I said, no, I don't like camping here. The way people act with nature and everything, just so disrespectful. But in Africa, it's a lot of fun. It's just a lot of fun because it's just a oneness with nature. People don't have to preach about it. It's just the way it is. And you just eat out there and you get whatever, But I digress. I wasn't having a one-to-one relationship with her. Even years into our relationship, I got married, and she was there and visited, and it was just like a dutiful type thing. And I was grateful I still had a friend. It was important, and it is important to have someone there in your life. And I appreciated that in the changing times of my life, having someone to talk to, even though I really couldn't go into the depths of what I was feeling, because, of course, as an empath, getting closer to someone is something that it is very challenging for us to process and whatnot. So I wasn't really at that place where I could go to those depths, but just having someone there, that presence piece. And then later when I got a divorce, going to England to stay with her for a while was just so cleansing. It was exactly what I needed. Again, before the crowds and crowds and crowds of tourists that are there now, it was just so refreshing. No cell phones to the extent now or whatever. People would leave their cell phones at home, unless you were really going somewhere. And even then, most people didn't have them. Just a very social, what I needed to get out with friends and whatnot, again, from school that we shared. And just that divorce was really when things started falling apart with my mother. And it was the end of her dream, but the beginning of what was truly my dream. And this is where that perfectly good relationship that I had with my Tanzanian girlfriend began to unravel as well, because that tribal thing was starting to fall apart. I didn't see it then, but the relationship was primarily based on that tribal connection, that motherland connection. That connection that is one that we talk about in the three suits as well. Of course, we have Divine Mother, we have Great Mother, we have Earth Mother, and we have Birth Mother and Motherland. And Motherland is heart chakra energy. It's really where our heart is. And the heart that we had for each other had to do with that shared African identity and that love that we crave as African Americans. We crave that, to have a love for our motherland. Yes, there's the duty, just as we had with one another, that dutiful kind of supportive relationship. And later when she had her children, she came to visit me and stay with me. And we struggled to sustain our relationship during that time and ever since, because we were becoming individuals. And the individuality is Great Mother energy. That individuality has to do with Great Mother's spirit team of angels, guides, and ancestors reminding us of why we incarnated as soul in this body, this lifetime. We're not always of African descent. And I laugh when I say that because every human being is. But we're not always identified as Africans. We're not always identified as women, female, male, whatever the prefix is in whatever period of time. We're not. And our angels, guides, and ancestors come in to remind us of that. And with empaths, when that happens, if we haven't had cognitive dissonance before, on a conscious level, because we live with it, that's what takes up all of our energy, right? We know our core belief, our soul, in other words, knows we are dearly loved, divine children of the Great Mother, Father, God, who are never judged, condemned, or left alone. But that maternal experience, though, does not resonate with that. So we live with this cognitive dissonance, but when it becomes conscious, we have to make a choice if we want to live, or we will begin to die. That is the reality. And that is why perfectly good friends go by the wayside. And it's excruciating. It has been very excruciating, although I must say it would have been more difficult before I learned about MDT than it has been since Great Mother brought this message to us and for us. Because the reality of the situation is, there was not any one particular thing other than she started living a life that I really didn't identify with. It wasn't my path, the whole corporate thing and this, that, and the other. In fact, I had even told, what she does is something that I told her about, when I was, but it wasn't something that I ended up pursuing, because I went back over there for graduate school to the London School of Economics and, was talking about international trade and banking at a time when she was doing computer science, and so that's what she does now. And that's something that you'll notice as an empath too. The guidance that we give people, just again, because the soul just blurts things out. It has nothing to do with how great and how, we are. Yes, we do have wisdom through experience, but it's not anything that we own. It's to be given, it's to be shared. So that's why Great Mother wants us to heal, so that we can do that on a continuous basis, which is why we're here. We're here to learn and we're here to give it. We're here to learn and we're here to give it. We're here to learn and we're here to give it. We're here to learn whatever that learning is, whatever that giving is. So as I became more engrossed in learning about the source of my pain and why I couldn't sustain healthy relationships such as my marriage, and sincerely began to ask my angels, guides, and ancestors, Great Mother, Father God, why? What is this about? It wasn't too long before Great Mother delivered the Oracle deck. And of course, there's a whole story to that, but now you know why I was open to it, is because I was raised Christian in a Baptist church, but Afrocentrically. And so open to there are other cultures. It's not just one way to see God. There's just one experience that you can have with God. You know, that was seen as a very primitive way of being. You know, my grandmother was an empath. That, again, it was just part of, okay, this is how it's been delivered at a time when Oracle decks weren't really that popular. And, you know, they were starting to gain some general usage, but other than Hay House publications, there wasn't a lot being done other than the tarot deck. But I'm saying that to say, get used to it. Yes, you should expect that being an empath is going to be something that not only that as a highly sensitive person, you need time and space to yourself in order to regulate. You need time and space to yourself. And that's why a lot of people are not going to necessarily relate. Now, that's the healing process that you will definitely need to have that time and space to heal. And so that's the letting go of those perfectly good relationships that are based on identities that are not truly who you are. I'm truly someone here to assist others to heal from mama drama trauma. And that was something that gave my Tanzanian girlfriend cognitive dissonance. Because how could I, after all of this wonderful tribal, and when she visited my family and the family business, black business, you know, prospering and everybody working together, and oh, this is how she has all these ideas about Africa, and then she goes there and that's the way it is for her. And, you know, how can she now say this about her mother? And she's not an empath, but she has the mother wound. You know, it's not unusual. Most people do. It's a natural thing. It's a natural thing to not receive the kind of maternal presence, provision of care, and protection that you need. It's important for us to develop self-love as souls. And so that's why we have it. It's not a judgment or condemnation. It's not anything. And again, that's why knowing our birth chart is useful, so we can see what angle we come at that. The angle I come at it with regard to my birth chart is anger, a lot of rage about not having the maternal presence, protection, and provision of care that I need. A lot of rage. And projecting that rage out onto others. And so that expectation, the motherland should love me. So where I live, the country, the community should be supportive, okay? And so that was reinforced in my birth chart in the wheelhouse of family through the family that I grew up in. You know, militant and, you know, not very, very militant, but self-aware, which in this country is viewed as militant. You can't even be self-aware. We're not going to talk about what's going on in the school system in Florida. You can't even be self-aware. That's a threat. That's militaristic, just to know who you are. But this awareness helps me to keep that in check to even see the humor in it. It's really ridiculous to view someone's self-awareness that has been oppressed as a threat. Because, are you really that weak? And if someone is that weak, why are you still afraid of them? It's just funny. And we're seeing that less and less fear is happening because more and more people are saying that. You got to be pretty weak. So that has helped me develop my own sense of self-love by redirecting that Martian energy that's in my chart, that anger, towards doing this work. And so that's the usefulness of that. And it's important to learn how to redirect our energies, because if we keep them where they are, that's where the implosion occurs. That's the death path. That's the overconsumption of MDT. That's being stuck in acknowledgement and not going into the self-inquiry that says, this must be wrong. Why am I feeling this way? I'm a dearly loved divine child, the great Mother, Father, God, who's never judged, condemned, or left alone. Why does this motherland always feel like it's attacking me if I'm a divine child? It enables us to respond to what feels like an onslaught of MDT from every corner of our lives, instead of reacting to it from a place of unconscious wounding. So our alone time is not so much spent licking our wounds, which we need to do, and we need to do often to get to a point of stabilization. We can't really love ourselves until we stabilize ourselves. Okay, and so this is the self-compassion. This is redirecting that energy. Some people have a perspective that I've worked with that have that huge Jupiterian energy that I was speaking of earlier, that I understand Mama did the best she could, and I'm not blaming anybody. It's just the way it is. This is terrible. She was abused, so I'm just going to go on with it. They have a lot of Jupiterian energy, the sage energy, and so they're just going to understand everything away. They have to learn, and I've had to work with people with that type of energy to redirect that goodwill, that divine wisdom inward into understanding why is it that they feel that they need to leapfrog from their emotions. Why is it more valuable to self-abandon than it is to sit with their true emotions in the world and not on a cloud somewhere? Those types of self-inquiries that take us from acknowledgement through the grieving steps. Because as we grieve the denial, the self-judgment, and the self-condemnation, as we grieve the blocks that have kept us from really having the associations that we need. I am still on friendly terms with my friend from Tanzania, but if I can't talk about what I do in a way that is valued, or in a way that I feel I can reciprocate what her interests are as well, it's just like anything else. You walk into a party, you go to a party, you sit down, you talk to somebody, and, they're really into crocheting or gardening or whatever, but that's really not your jam. You're really into something else, then it's friendly, but you move on. Somebody over by the cocktail table, and you talk about what you're interested in with that person who shares the same interests, is that type of thing. And not about judgment or condemnation, We are all divine. It's just realizing that through our healing process, self-love is reflected in our associations, just like a lack of self-love, a lack of self-awareness was reflected with a lack of awareness of MDT. When we didn't know we had MDT, we had all kinds of toxic relationships running our lives and running our emotional state. But as we become more aware of it, we become aware of the ties that bind, having us in bondage to a particular lifestyle, to a particular perspective of life that we no longer have the more we reclaim our divinity identity. And those perfectly fine relationships are still perfectly fine as they are, as we begin to see them for what they are. The relationship I have with her is what it is. I don't continue to pretend that it's something that it's not. So that's what happens, and it's not something to fear. In fact, it is something to welcome, because the more we do, the more we're able to have relationships with people on a realistic basis. Like I said, we still have a relationship, but you're not going to really necessarily have those real heart-to-heart relationships. Most of us, unless we're really extroverted type personalities that are meaningful and that feed us, that reciprocate the energy that we give out, is what I'm saying. We're so used to and we're so accustomed to giving, we don't even think about or even expect or even conceive of ever getting anything back. But that's what I'm talking about today. I'm talking about we can and we do receive what we give out back, the more that we acknowledge and recognize who we are, ourselves. Because whoever we are and whoever we believe we are is what we attract. At that particular time, that's all I thought I was. I was just, this proud African-American child from the Midwest, well-educated, well-exposed, whatever. That's who I was. I was my family's child. I was my mother's daughter. As I began to heal, I became great mother's daughter. I became someone who not only conceptually knew I was the dearly loved divine child, the great mother, father, God, but someone who actually began to practice not being judged, not being condemned, not being left alone. I felt lonely in that relationship as the years went on. It was all about the kids and all about that. I have nothing against none of it, but it wasn't what I was feeling fed by in exchange to what I was given. You see, and no one can judge that reciprocal cycle but you. And we tend to be low energy, which is why we are perceived as selfish. We are perceived as selfish because we need a lot of energy. We tire easily. And so when we give out, we're giving a lot of ourselves. It may not seem like a lot to other people, mainly because they have no clue of the mechanizations that go on in our body mind. They don't have a clue. Even if you try to explain it, they don't have a clue. I was listening to this woman the other day, I'm doing this intermittent fasting that another friend, by the way, that I recently had to, distance myself from, told me about. People are great, but I find it useful, even years on in the MDT healing process. There are times, like I said, I just went through a stressful period, and we are in a stressful period at this time. I modulate my stuff, what I give and how I give, and I can turn the knob up and turn it down at will. That is my divine birthright, to be happy, healthy, and whole. And I've been giving, because you know what? That's what we're here to do. We're here to give. We're here to learn, and we're here to give. We're here to learn how to give even more, how to give greatly. Only time I didn't sing a song this time, given one of my songs, is because, I just wasn't feeling the vibe with everything that's going on. But give it all. That's what we're here to do. But not at the expense of ourselves. Never, ever, under no circumstances. Because you know what that would mean? If we gave at our own expense, that would mean we won't be here. Doesn't make sense. That's why we don't give at our expense. Doesn't make sense. That's all. Just doesn't make sense. We don't need no more explanation than that. But some of us do, until we learn for ourselves. And so I wanted to put this down for whoever is ready to pick up, that we don't have to do all that. This intermittent fasting thing, I was watching this video, and very good doctor explaining you hows and the do's and the don'ts and whatever. And this is perfect. Food is high as I don't know what. Everybody's jumping on the intermittent fasting. Don't try to act like it's anything else. But of course, no one else will see that but an empath, right? I, like many people, don't necessarily do it for that reason, but to lose weight. And she's up here talking about, which I agree with, but the way it was said was like, you're going to eat to refuel on the days that you eat, not because, of some type of emotional whatever. And we always get that. We always get these little snide remarks about emotion. And yes, we do emotionally eat. We emotionally do everything because emotions are running through our whole system all the time. And so that's another thing that we have to put at rest in these perfectly good relationships, is the emotional dependence that we can have on people, such as I had with my Tanzanian friend. I felt alone and alienated, but as long as I could identify as an African and I could be proud, well, then I had somebody. I had a whole continent. I had a whole group of people. And here she is in the flesh who's supporting me. And that's wonderful. And that's all fine and good. But the foundation of this power, this strength, is based on a weakness, a need that is created by someone else. I was taught that. I don't need that. Not as a dearly loved divine child of the great Mother, Father, God, who's never judged, condemned, or left alone. I don't need that. I don't need it. That's motherland. That's the heart. The heart chakra is integrity. Root chakra, acknowledgement. Sacral chakra, self-inquiry. Gut chakra, of course, is processing. Integrity is the heart chakra, that motherland, that open expanse within ourselves that knows that Earth Mother is a living, breathing being that processes us and is doing that on this planet right now, is processing our emotions right now. And what are they? Well, we're seeing them. We're seeing them. And so we want to ground ourselves in ourselves, not out of anger, not out of a sense of being above anyone. It's not what any of this is about. It's a sense of claiming and reclaiming who we are because we can. Because we are at a stage of our soul evolution where we can do that. Why not use the power that we have instead of subscribing to illusions of it that are given to us? Why? Because we don't want to, quote unquote, lose these perfectly good relationships. I'm not saying we have to lose them. I'm saying we have to lose the perception of them as perfectly good for us. Instead of these perfectly good crutches that we limp on throughout our lives. You want to limp, or do you want to lunge into a feverish, joyous dance of life? I'll let you decide. In the meantime and in between time, I hope that has been useful in understanding the importance of making difficult decisions in the course of healing mama drama trauma, that in the end are the emotional calisthenics that get us to the point of living in loving detachment from what? Mama, drama, and the trauma that can and will replicate itself throughout our lives until we break the cycle. That's what we're here for at MDT Academy. And remember, as always, Great Mother loves you, and I do too.